Masemola. Next to General Masemola is the Deputy Minister for Justice and Correctional Services, Mr. John Jeffrey. Next to the Deputy Minister is Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Minister Ronald Lamola. And Minister of Police, General Betty Sele. Next to Minister Sele is Deputy Minister of Police, Minister Kessel Matali, and then the National Commissioner of the South African Police Service, General Kenta Sikon. Let me begin by apologizing for starting a little late, but in any event, we welcome you today because this is a very important media briefing where our principals will be pronouncing on the measures that have been implemented to ensure that disaster management regulations that were promulgated on the 18th are realized. So without wasting much time, I will hand over to the Minister of Police, Honorable General Bekitele, to take us through what the SAPS has done. Over to you, Minister.
No thanks, Brigadier Tapelo, the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Ronald Lamola, Deputy Minister of Police, Bamatale, Deputy Minister, Justice Correctional Service, John Jeffrey, the National Commissioner of the South African Police, that is here, the Acting Director General of the Department of Justice and Constitutional, Advocate Skosana, top management of the South African Police and top leadership of the Justice Department, the media, Glenn, good morning, no, good afternoon. The background that informs our gathering here today continues to dominate the current affairs of the world and the country at large across the media spectrum. This subject remains a bone of contention as each day ends with the escalation figures of confirmed cases of COVID-19 in South Africa. It is on that score that we address the media in South Africa on the enforcement of the new Gazette COVID Disaster Management Regulation in stamping the authority of the state. I'm told that the number has moved from 150 to 202. So it's really flying now. Police will be looking at the sections given by the regulations here. Section 10 of this regulation empowers the Minister of Police to issue directions to address, prevent, and combat the spread of the COVID-19 in all police stations, police precincts, and holding cells. I have therefore directed the management of the South African Police to implement measures that will see all members, particularly those who are in close contact with different communities who visit our police stations, provided with maximum protection against possible infection of the coronavirus. We have at this point procured essential hygiene supplies such as gloves and hand sanitizers for our police stations and our precincts. And agent procurement processes are underway to ensure adequate supply all community service centers. That community service centers is what you used to call church offices. We don't have churches as offices anymore. Have been prioritized in terms of distribution. And I've instructed the management of SAPS to see to it that the members on the ground are provided for, and at the same time ensure that everyone on duty complies with COVID-19 hygiene protocols as a matter of urgency. Members of public who will be visiting our police stations for various reasons shall be required to cooperate with police members on duty. regarding the hygienic protocols that will be in place. For example, you will sanitize accordingly as you enter the police station. Equally, I want to also take this opportunity to appeal to communities to, as far as possible, limit walk-ins and visit police stations only if and when it is absolutely necessary. For instance, applications for police clearances, taking off fingerprints, renewals of firearms licenses, certified documents that are not urgent should rather be postponed. Bear in mind, fellow citizens, the firearms amnesty period is still underway until the end of 2020. Remember to hand over those unwanted and illegal firearms and ammunition at police stations. I think one significant thing that we can say here is that we are expected to have the intake of 7,000 new members to come to our institution so that they can be trained as the South African police. That is suspended until further notice. There shall be no intake of those members coming to our institutions. We'll be practicalizing what we have said. The 6 o'clock thing is known now. We have checked the taverns in the Republic of South Africa. We've got 19,971 of them, taverns. And we've got 11,000 bottle stores. And we have got 9,747 restaurants. And we've got 2,518 clubs. As from today, as the South African police were appointing spotters, those spotters will be in these places, especially those places that sell food and alcohol. We want to reiterate this because it seems to be a little bit of confusion. At 6 o'clock, selling and consumption of alcohol shuts down. But in places where there is food selling, it continues. Restaurants, you'll understand that there are taverns where they braai and all, that continues. If you buy your bottle of alcohol at 5 to 6, you will have to take it home. You can't finish it where you are seated when you continue to eat. We'll have these spotters and we'll make sure that if you break those laws, police will disperse the people there if there are more than 50 and will take in detention the owner, stroke the organizer of any event that is more than 50 at this juncture or 100 out there. One other thing that we are calling is that these places of food, they must have register for the people that are coming there, so that there is a traceability. If we find that there was somebody that in this particular time was there and was found to be positive, we are able to trace other people that were there. So they'll have to keep the registers so that police, as they come at any given time, they find those registers and they are able to trace the people that were supposed to be there. The question that I'll repeat, that was raised yesterday, there is no permission to get more than 100 people at any given time. So there is no need for you to go to police station and get the permission of getting more than 100 people. 100 people is here on these regulations as the law, that you will keep those 100 people, either in funerals, either in weddings, or any other coming together. There shall be no street bashes. It is nonetheless illegal to have a public drinking. All street bashes will be dismissed, and their organizers, if they are organizers, will be taken in for the detention by the South African police. We are also trying to get the equipment that to check. We will get it to check, because Minister Lamula has closed the visit to his facilities. So people that, if they need to go from the police, go there, they'll have to be checked. But like in correctional services, there will be no visits in the police, South African Police Service cells. Nobody will be visited there, except if they see the attorneys. They are legal people. But you don't bring your bread, or the can of anything to say you are going there. So those people will be shut down. We have sharpened our FCS units in the police station. People have raised the concern that if people drink home, the home abuse might increase. So we are putting our FCS units at all police stations to be able to respond to any form of abuse at home. Having said so, these are the things that we'll do, and these are the things that will work, and the aim is to implement the law that has been put there, and is not to punish everybody. We are calling on people to cooperate. I must say that we thank what we have seen up to this point, especially the people that deal with restaurants. They have raised the issue of their problems, but they have not defied, and they have not said they will defy the government decisions. Except some few churches that have said they will defy the government decision of the restriction of numbers. On those, it's not just a promise, but it's what we're going to do. They will see the authority of the state. You go to church after the meeting had taken place yesterday, and you have more than 100 people at there. Those people that are organizing this thing, even if abefundis, reverends, we will act on them. We are making the call. We're making the call. Stop that thing of opposing the government and the decisions that have been made the law. Churches yesterday put it very well, that the churches in this country are subjected to the law of the land. So everybody will have to follow that one. Well, the Minister of Correctional Service or Justice and Correctional Service is here, will specifically on the matters that practical going forward from his department work on them. Minister Lamula.
Thank you very much, Minister Kele. And I want to state that he has already observed protocol on my behalf, because I'm continuing from where he left. The Department of Correctional Services has not yet recorded any positive case of COVID-19 across all its centers in the country thus far. We will continue with preventative measures which are aimed at combating the spread of the virus. We appeal to all stakeholders across our correctional services to be active agents in the fight against this pandemic. We have identified and are currently implementing the following measures across all our centers to protect the offenders, officials, stakeholders, as well as to prevent infections, namely prohibiting the visitors to all the correctional centers for a period of 30 days. This will be reviewed on the 15th of April 2020. Appointment of a multidisciplinary committees across all the regions, establishments of partnerships with strategic stakeholders to help prevent the spread of the virus. This has happened in all the 5 regions. As you have heard the Minister of Police speaking about the police cells, this has a relay effect from the police cells to the court cells to our centers. So with public works, there will be deep cleaning of all the centers almost twice a day or more in some of the cells, to avoid any kind of contamination of the cells, either from the police station to the court cells, also to the centers of correctional services. So this is an integrated approach from the police, NPA, and the correctional services, including the presiding officers of the various courts. So there is a clear integrated strategy aimed to deal with this issue across. These issues will deal with the sanitization, cleaning, and strategic areas across all the cells, court cells, transportation of the inmates, availing basic hygiene essentials to offenders and officials. We are currently distributing the essentials, which include the gloves, masks, disinfecting keys, shackles, various measures that relate to the sanitization. We've also putting in place to engage the courts to utilize the audiovisual remand system for postponement of the cases. We've got 46 audiovisual remand sites across the country. These audiovisual reminds are connected from correctional services to the courts, that all postponements of the inmates who are in our centers can be done through this visual remand video conferencing. The magistrate can be able to engage with the inmate from the correctional services center, the prosecutor, including if there are attorneys or lawyers or representative of the accused. We are also currently looking at measures, how can we enable, if there may be a trial, enable the accused or the offenders to consult with their lawyers through some of the technological platforms, particularly where it may be necessary to run a trial. We are also conducting some various awareness campaigns, even amongst the offenders, so that they also take their own initiatives. We're also looking at isolating of officials who travels outside of the country recently to the high-risk areas. We currently have 4 officials from KZN and Gauteng who have been isolated as a precaution after displaying presumptive symptoms. There have been increased concerns from South Africans with loved ones in our centers, informed by the fear that COVID-19 poses a risk to those who are confined to the narrow spaces and those who are at a close proximity to each other. We are also looking at ways which technology can also be used for some of the inmates to interact with some of their family members as and when the need arises. We want to assure South Africans that the measures are in place to ensure that the offenders are safe and they are able to be put in some kind of measures that will avoid the spread of this virus in the various centers, but also they are still able to participate in the criminal justice value chain and the system, as they may need to go to court and the various platforms that may be necessary for them. With regard to the Master's Office, which is also one of our massive areas of contact with the public, in terms of the regulations of gatherings of more than 100 people, for this, each offices, depending on their capacity, will determine the number of public granted access to the office building, but shall not exceed 100. This is to ensure that the well-being and safety of both the officials and the public. As you are aware, the masters, there are regulations that they need, creditors need to meet when there are issues of liquidations, when there are issues of meetings of creditors. All those meetings will be cancelled or suspended up until the 15th of April, including meetings with regards to the issues of the deceased estates. As you are aware, when there is a will or it's an interstate, there may be a need for people to come together for the reading of the will or for whatever purposes. Also, those we are encouraging that they should be suspended up until the 15th of April. up until we've found measures that can enable us to make this practical and possible. We're also saying the Master's Office does accept electronic documents. The following documents may be submitted electronically for the interim if it is accompanied by an affidavit confirming the correctness thereof. It is authenticated that the originals will be lodged when called upon by the master. Bonds of security. There is a list, long list, which you will see from the statement, which members of the public are allowed to use to lodge some of the documents electronically, because there may be some agencies that the Master's Office may need to enable families to access insurances and various issues that might be urgent. So that will have to be done through electronic. But when you do go to the offices of the Master, if you have to go there, we will also ensure that the measures that are put, that people are not many, and the measures are put in a manner that they sanitize us, all the things that as were directed by the Department of Health. In terms of the court directives issued by the Chief Justice, the courts are now restricted to persons with material interest in the case, such as litigants, accused, witnesses, those who may be needed to provide support, such as those accompanying children, victims of domestic violence and sexual abuse, elderly and people with disabilities. Family members, representatives of the special interest or support groups, and members of the media will be permitted to enter the court precinct. Non-essential visitors will only be allowed into the court precincts with the permission of the head of the court. We will also want to convey our message of gratitude again to the various legal practitioners across the country who have been helping us to develop the regulations that we announce from time to time, the advocates and also practicing attorneys. And we will further request that they continue to help us. Some of them are helping us on a voluntary basis, reduced rate or on a flat rate. So it is clear to the legal practitioners and the professionals that this is not a moment of profiteering. It's a real Tumamina moment, and we believe that we will need more of them across the country as and when the situation demands and the need arises, because we will need them to help us with the enforcement of the regulations. In certain situations, we may need court orders. In certain situations, we may need directives and so forth. So we just want to convey that message of gratitude to all of them. Thank you, Brigadier.
Thank you very much, Minister. Minister Service Manager, we can go to the questions now.
Yes, we'll go to the questions through your permission.
Okay. Thank you very much for the permission, Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the briefing, but now we're coming over to the question and answer session. I am going to start in front and then move up to those. I've recognized your hands up there. Can we start with you? Please start by introducing yourself, the media house where you come from, and then your question, please.
Minister Lamula, with regards to the 30-day visits, or notice and over 30 days, will that be, after the 30 days, we look into depending how the virus progresses? Depending on how the virus progresses. And with Minister Zele, the numbers of the bottle stores and the taverns and everything you mean that, are all those the legal ones? And do you have maybe a certain number of illegal ones, and what will happen to them?
I'm seeing Barry and then behind Barry. I'll take three at a time.
Good afternoon, Barry Blakely from ENCA. Firstly, on this, Minister Taylor, this requirement that you spoke of about the names and registers of the people visiting the restaurants, is that stipulated in one of the regulations which have been gazetted? I just want to, where's the authority for that requirement on the business owners to hold that register? I can understand how it is helpful. I just want to know where people would be able to go and find that requirement. And then secondly, speaking to the authorities who would be laying down the law and ensuring compliance, there has been a criminalization of the distribution of fake news as well as disinformation related to COVID-19. It's practically easier to police restaurants and the like,
how do you intend enforcing these regulations in the social media space? How is that going to, just the modalities of doing it? Thank you.
Thanks, Barry. The next question, please.
Hi, Minister. This is Christian Duplessis from Netwerk 24. Minister, there seems to be some contradiction in the government gazette with regards to the opening of, or the closing of restaurants. In the gazette, the regulations specifically state that restaurants or any drinking places must close after 6 until 9. But now you're saying that they still can remain open if they sell food, but they must just not sell alcohol. What is the reason for that difference in that approach?
Thank you. I'll now hand over to Minister Labola. The first question was to you.
Yes, it will be reviewed. It will be reviewed after the 30 days and looking at the situation, whether we can now strengthen, relax, or change it. In fact, all the regulations are subject to constant review. So it will be helpful for members of the media to every day look into what might be coming out through the government gazettes, because at any time we can strengthen the regulations, and the various line departments have got the powers to even issue directives, not only regulations. We can also issue directives to the various players to strengthen the regulations. So I think that is what could be helpful also in this, because in certain circumstances, an urgent situation might arise, which we will not have to wait to redraft or to draft the regulation. We will have to just, on the practical, as we move on, issue a directive, which we will then assess whether there is a need to elevate it to a level of a regulation as we move along.
Well, first question, illegal shebeens should not exist anyway. So we don't count them, we shut them down. But there is a special dispensation in Gauteng where beyond the taverns, they've granted some form of license stroke to about 15,255 of them. If they are illegal, they will be treated as legal. That you open at 9, you shut down at 6. As I've said, that will be getting spotters for all of them and creating response teams that if our spotter spots you and get to the response team, we will really come to you. And then there could be a arrest and seizure, which means if you break the law, we can go on and seize your trading tools, your fridges, your everything, take everything and shut the thing down as you break the law. So that's what will happen with the legal one. We're dealing with legal stuff here. The legal one, we don't even need these regulations. The register, you remember that we're not just under the normal circumstances. So anything that helps to combat and to prevent going forward will be done at any particular time to make sure that you achieve that. These directions, now and again, if you go to I think we'll be going to 9. You check that where ministers can issue directives. I think one of them, number 4, under that number, I've correct, is Minister of Police can issue directions to combat and prevent the spread of this disease. So that does that. So now and again you issue. So this is covered in the law as it stands, declared by the President as it is done. First, fake news. It might take some time, but police do have the capacity of chasing fake news. We do have the units in the South African police that can trace the origin of the fake news and how far has it spread. So if it is declared a fake news, we will check that, we will trace it and know what this law says about fake news. But police, with other agencies within the security cluster, I'm sure your state security and all that, we do have capacity of checking on these things. I don't know why you ask why. We deal with alcohol that shuts at 6, but people continue to eat. What has been changed with the people continuing to eat is from 100 to 50. The reason is simple. People that are sitting and eating will observe the laws better than the people that are drinking and dancing. They'll observe the distance, social distance, and all that. Here, this should not be punitive. People should not be punished. But at the same time, the laws must protect the very same patrons that will be going to those areas. We're shutting down the drinking. We're shutting down the sale of alcohol. After 6, you can still drink your alcohol only at home and nowhere else in these places. The confusion that you talk about of the municipalities, this is a national law that supersedes any other law that exists there. But also to work on the confusion, I think tomorrow or from Monday, the National Commissioner will be inviting all Metro Police, the heads of Metro Police, to sit down with them and those people that are law enforcement agencies in their towns, so that there is a coordination and the multiple kind of policing on the matter, but they were all synergized to follow this law. So that's what the National Commission will be doing in next few days. So there is no confusion about them. You go there, you eat, you drink before 6. Once 6 comes, the sale shuts down, the bottles are shut, and then if you had anything that you have not finished, you take it home. And if you continue, we'll spot you, and the owner of the place that allows you to continue to drink will be arrested. The organizer of a person that organizes anything more than 100 will be arrested, but the rest of the people will be dispersed. Either 50 of them or more than 100 of them will be dispersed. 50 in the restaurant includes the staff in the restaurant, not just all the patrons. The number here is 50 of the warm bodies, including the staff. Thanks.
Before I take the next set of questions, I'll first switch over to Cape Town. We have a link to our Cape Town colleagues. Can I get 3 questions from Cape Town? The first one.
Good morning, Ilana from Rockport. These regulations, at what stage will this disaster management regulations become and turn into a state of emergency? If you have, for instance, large areas where medical facilities are non-existent or very weak, and you have a large outbreak, can you confine people to that area? Can you put large numbers of people into quarantine in such an event? Or will you need a state of emergency regulations? Secondly, now is organizing a nice protest march on the 30th of March. What is the status of that labor dispute? That's the civil service. It's about the civil service, particularly the wage increase that's supposed to come into effect on the 1st of April. It's probably not going to come into effect. What is the status of other labor disputes and strikes?
Thank you. Can I get the second question from Cape Town, please?
Yes, thank you very much. Good afternoon, ministers. My name is Brianni Green from SABC. My questions are directed to the Minister Tswele and Minister Lamola. The first one, Minister, you talk about spotters. Presumably, these are people who will inform the police when these regulations are breached. Why don't you call them informers or impeders? And secondly, are you going to hire them, or are you going to use the existing network of police informers to do this job? And secondly, are you going to arrest pastors who defy these regulations? What if, for instance, the organizer is not clearly identifiable? Who are you going to arrest? Are you going to arrest everyone who's there in excess of the 100 threshold? Lastly, to Minister Lamola, you mentioned court orders, said there will be instances where you'll have to get court orders and you rely on some of these attorneys or advocates. Can you tell us in what instances do you think police will probably have to get court orders before they can implement some of these regulations? Thank you very much.
Thank you. The third question.
Hi, good day, Ministers. Paul Becchiotto from Bloomberg. Is Cabinet giving any consideration to deploying the military in support of the police, maybe to take over some guarding duties at various critical installations or that sort of thing, and clear policemen? Secondly, have the police thought about what happens if there's a coronavirus infection at a police station? How will they handle that? Because the police stations are hell of an infectious area. And yeah, those two questions are my main questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to hand over to the ministers to respond.
Okay, thank you. I will start with the first question. I'm not sure if this is operating. Yeah, the first one relates to at what stage will these regulations become an emergency, and whether through these regulations can we lock down a place. Yes, in terms of the State of Disaster Management Act, it gives the state powers to restrict movement, to do whatever is possible to avert a disaster. So through these regulations, we can be able to lock down a place if a need arises. We can be able to put measures that can restrict movement in terms of the regulations if indeed the need arises. And it is for that reason that we, as government, we believe that at this stage there is no need to speak about the issue of the state of emergency, because at this stage the regulations are enough for us to do what is necessary. And if we find a loophole on the regulations, as I said earlier, we can close it with a directive. We can also close that loophole with further regulations that strengthen the current regulations. With regard to the issue of Nehao, I think we will want to prefer to leave this one for the Minister of Public Service, because there are processes that are in place where there is engagement between the unions and government. And I think at the right time, he will be able to engage you about what is going to happen there and so forth. Instances where you will rely on a court order, already the Gauteng Department of Health had to rely on a court order in one of the matters, and that was before the regulations were issued. But now the regulations give various players power to quarantine people for testing and so forth. But for example, if a person who has tested positive does not want to be quarantined for 14 days, we may be forced to look into whether the regulations help us, or because this is very intrusive, we might be forced to get a court order to quarantine that person for 14 days, or for whatever that the Department of Health advises and the health regulations. I think that's where my questions end.
Well, in terms of protest, the law regulations are very clear on this one. Not more than 100 people. If people protest 100 and less, nothing we can do. But if people protest more than 100, At the present moment, that is not allowed. So police will have to act according to the existing regulations at the present moment. Informers, no, these are the police. If you want to term them informers, that's fine with you. But the people that will put them there would be most of them members of the police. It could be different units, including reservists and all that. So their job is to see that you are doing what you're not supposed to do, and then we bring the units that will act on that. What happens if we can't identify you? I don't know why we would not identify you. In your house, if something happens, we'll want the head of the house. That's where we'll start. If it is in a church, we'll want the head of the church. And are you asking if we'll arrest the mfundis and the head of the church if you break the law? Yes, you'll be treated as such. It will be easy to identify those organizers and all that. Our job, if people are coming there, we disperse them. Unfortunately, we're not going to arrest all those people there. What we'll do is to find the organizer. Organizers will be always identified. Military, no, is not yet the state of emergency. Military will come as, and if the state of emergency comes, for now remains the police and other law enforcement enforcers in the country, with the exception of Western Cape. With the exception of Western Cape, we'll remember that in Western Cape, the soldiers are still allowed to act together with the police if they need the support and all that, until they are withdrawn at the end of their term. But it's only there you can use, unless there is a state of emergency. Affected police. We have started and we have tried to prevent these things happening at the police station. But if they do happen at the police station, one thing for sure is that we're not going to keep more than 100 police at the police station. But if you care to see, we are increasing the patrols. Those police that can't be at the station will be patrolling out there. So the police station, if then one of them falls sick, it will follow the normal pattern of the police station being sanitized, and the people that are there will have to go to quarantine and all that. But as a precautionary measures, we have made sure that we don't keep all the police at the police station at the same time. Some of them must be out there and patrol, so that it doesn't happen that all the police are in the same police station, same time as this happens, and we follow the law. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll take the next set of questions. Colleagues, I'm going to ask you to bear with you. I can't see you on this line, but I can see you. Thank you. And behind you there. You can go ahead and ask the question.
It's Zanda Ngobo from Newsroom Africa. Just a clarity-seeking questions. Will these spotters and formers be operating undercover, or will they be actually wearing a uniform? But also, just to be very specific, what kind of punishments are we looking at exactly in terms of those who break the law with, this 100 people restriction? Is it an arrest? Is it just a shutdown at that particular time? Because if it is arrest, then I want to talk about the capacity of the prisons to take on all these arrests that would happen, and what would happen going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kenny O'Connor, News 24. This is for Minister Lamola. Just need some clarity. Are you saying with the new video platforms that you're going to be introducing for inmates to consult and appear in court, are you saying that no inmates will be leaving the correctional facilities? If so, for what period? And in correctional facilities where there may be issues of overcrowding, how are you going to protect inmates and keep in line with the 1 meter distance as directed by the President on Sunday? Thank you.
Okay, I see another question there.
Okay. My name is Yusuf from Army Holdings Media Group. Ngizoqala ngoBabulosi. Babulosi, with regards to spotters, ngizo-enter nje lapha umbuzo kanjalo on whether they'll be identifiable in uniform. Secondly, you mentioned these numbers of taverns being close to 20,000, 10,000 plus body stores, 9,000 plus restaurants. Does the police department have the capacity in terms of its human resource to actually be able to attend to this? Secondly, on that point, where do you strike the balance in terms of this overzealousness over coronavirus and other crimes that will be non-related to coronavirus in terms of stretching your human resources to attend to all those issues? Ubabula, you say there has not been any case of coronavirus reported in your correctional services. Has there been any test conducted? Because to me, one of the most bizarre things about the government response to this issue of coronavirus is that there is no testing. So how do you know what you are dealing with? Because also the issue of these regulations, they kicked in while coronavirus outbreak has been going on for weeks. Therefore, you don't know that before the imposition of these restrictions, there were people who might have been affected who actually visited these correctional service centers. I mean, it extends, for instance, to the issue of universities. They are sending kids that they are not testing back to their villages and townships. What if some of them are actually positive and they are going back there to spread this, coronavirus? Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll give over to the minister to respond.
Yeah, no, thank you. The first one is with regard to the video conferencing and whether there will be no inmates going into the courts. I think I was very clear from the beginning that inmates will still go to the courts. What we don't want them to do and to go to courts for is for postponements. Just for him to be driven from Hoshimampuru to go to the Pretoria High Court to postpone, or from Durban Westville to the Magistrate Court for a postponement. Those who are encouraging that they should only be done through the video conferencing, which we already have in the various centers. And this is not a new, thing. We already have the video conferencing in the various correctional centers, which are linked to the courts. The only thing is that they have not been used to the optimum. What we are now saying is that they must be used optimally by the NPA, by the courts, by the correctional centers, and not go to courts to postpone a matter. The remand detention inmates can be able to postpone a matter from the courts, from the correctional center. In certain instances, we are also looking at that. They could also look at the courts also coming into the correctional centers to postpone matters, for example, where maybe the video conferencing maybe is malfunctioning. And there's enough inmates in that correctional center, the court can go and postpone a matter in that correctional facility, because we also have courts in some of these correctional facilities. There is where there is a court which can function, which can do postponements. So the aim is to reduce the traffic from the correctional center into the courts. But where there are people, the inmates who might have to be undergoing trials and the court still believes the trial is necessary, we are not going to stop that. They will still be transported to the courts. They are still going to undergo the trial if the court says it's proceeding, and also the prosecutors and the police are saying they are proceeding with a particular trial. It still needs to be done. Hence, we then speak about the fact that when such things do happen, where absolute necessity dictates that the court appearance must happen, therefore there must be cleaning of the court cell, there must be cleaning of the police cell, there must be cleaning of the police van, and also the van of correctional services. All those, it's part of what I've said, is an integrated strategy from the criminal justice cluster to ensure that all these facilities, they are as far as possible at least insulated from the various measures that the Department of Health has advised us to do. Whether we've done testing, and as we are saying, there's not been a positive test at this stage. You will remember we are doing this under the guidance of the Department of Health. And the Minister of Health has spoken on many occasions that we have not yet reached the stage of massive testing. And he has also given clear guidelines as to when and under which circumstances will a person be tested. A person who has demonstrated the symptoms and all those things. So even correctional services is being helped and guided by the Department of Health. It just does not wake up and do as they please. They are doing this under the strict guidance and advice of the Department of Health.
Mango, I can see the interest of these spotters is big.
She wants to identify them.
Look, you might not even reach the time when we need these spotters at 100%. Yesterday, I was phoned, I think I received 4 calls. One was from Hillcrest, one was from Enanda, one was from Mdantsane, telling me that it's 6, but people are still drinking, from ordinary community members. They are spotters themselves. What has been happening here, as the South African police, we have been receiving a lot of these complaints from the community members. But the problem would be that the shipping is licensed and it closes, according to its certificate and license, it closes at 12. People complain at 11. Others close at 2. Some of them close at 4, according to the license. Now there is nobody that closes any other time beyond 6. It makes work of the South African police very, very easy now. They tell us that there is a noise 5 past 6 Police Act. The spotters, most of them will be members of the South African police. Others will be in uniform, others won't be in uniform, but they will be giving the information to the units that some of them already have been created and are busy creating, that will respond as they are called that there is a problem in that particular area. You might see them, you might not see them. Some of them, as I said, might be community next door that are giving trouble and all that, but what we are looking forward on this is to get information and act on information. I hope this question of the spotters now is gone. Arrest will pack no, it has been explained time and again. When we go to 100 people, we'll disperse them. And people that will be arrested are organizers of those events. But the rest of the people will be dispersed. So we're not going to be having en masse arrest. In restaurants, if they sell alcohol after 6, those patrons that are there will be dispersed. But the organizer or the owner, then because we have broken the law, will then be arrested. It is in, somebody did ask what I think is Zianda too. What happens in terms of punishing those people? It is in this regulations, Zianda. It's 6 months in prison or fine or both. So it is here. So it's not something that will be going, but everything will go through processes, will go through the Ministry of Justice, courts and all that. But the law does tell what it will happen. So I don't think that is a much of a problem on that one. Crime and the Carola. There is a good relationship on working on that thing. You must remember that alcohol or liquor itself is causing a lot of crime. It has been causing a lot of crime. So there will be an impact in dealing with coronavirus issues. They will impact positively when it comes to things like crime, especially the crime that generated by liquor. Our research tells us that one place in country, that is Inanda. Inanda is number 1 in terms of rape in South Africa. Nanda police station precincts. But we are told by the research that everybody that is raped there is from Tavern, and everybody that rapes is from Tavern, which means if the Corolla dealing with the issue of liquor, it will also impact on crime matters. You pick up many dead bodies around Shibins, come 3 o'clock in the morning, come 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. So if these Shibins are shut down at 6, it's a coronavirus war against it, but also it impacts positively in terms of dealing with the crime situation. Thanks.
I'll go to Cape Town. I think we have another 2 questions. Cape Town, you ready to take your question?
Just with the clarity of your answer to my first question about an emergency, I think the regulations talk about, you use the word a place that can be put under quarantine. The regulations use the word, I think, terrain or venue. What I was referring to was actually a larger area like a township or a district or even a region. Can you lock down areas of that size in terms of this regulations, or will you need scattering measures?
Thank you, for Media. Minister Cele, you and I are old enough to remember history of police brutality. What levels of force are allowed to disperse people? Would that include tear gas? Would it include live ammunition? Would it include other ammunition, rubber bullets, that kind of thing?
Thank you very much, Vuyani Green again. Minister Cele, I think in your opening remarks you said we are hiring spotters. But in your response to our question, you said that these spotters will be members of the South African Police. I'll leave it at that. But the last question on my part is the enforceability of these regulations. I will appreciate if I can get a response from both you, Minister Twele and Minister Lamola. Aren't you worried that the enforceability of these regulations is likely to give rise to a deluge of civil claims for damages against the Minister of Police in instances where the police abuse their power? I think this question relates to what Yan, my colleague, has just asked. In instances where, for instance, the police, acted unlawfully and effected wrongful arrest, and then those people will drag the police and you, Minister, to court for damages. Aren't you worried about that? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question, Cape Town. But I need to correct something. Vuyani, in Cape Town, the Minister of Police is General Nkiteke, not Twele. I hand over to the ministers to respond.
Okay. Oh, we have been starting on the time. Vuyani is Cele speaking. Look, this question you left hanging is not give the direction that you want to give. The people, some of the people that would be brought, maybe the term hired. I'm definitely a Zulu speaker, I'm not an English speaker. The term people like, I did say reservist, those people are in the police system, will be part of doing that work. And police sometimes, it can be an extra hiring. We're not going to be hiring everybody. Some will be people that are in the system. So don't leave it hanging, get the answer of it, and that's the answer of it. Enforceability, the job of the police, if you go to the Bible of the country called Constitution, and you read it 205, it will tell you that is the responsibility of the South African Police Service to enforce the law. So we are doing what has been instructed by the Constitution. So we're not just flying around and saying what we can do. We're doing exactly what has been said to us we must do. In doing those things, some of our members will do wrong things like calling Electoral. They themselves will do some mistakes going forward on these matters. And if they do those matters, we'll deal with them accordingly. There are systems in the South African police to deal with the police that are breaking the law or are doing the mistake. That's why we have an IPIT. That's why we have an ACU within the police and other human rights people that are overseeing the police. So if they're enthused of doing those things, they know that they cannot break the law. If they do, there are consequences. That question, as you have said yourself, is linked up with the first question. The South African Police Service is what exists now. You and me will go under the South African Police Force. South African Police Force and South African Police Service, they must behave in different ways. But as I've said, human beings now and again, they deviate. To start with, all police units that are dealing with the crowds, main one here, POP, Public Order Policing, is not issued with the live ammunition, as you say. And this matter is for the Public Order Policing to look after. But let me add here, the people of South Africa, most of them are really responding to this matter. I've said to you, I've listened several of them dealing with the restaurants and taverns, saying it's difficult, it's economic difficult, but they respect the law and they'll do it. In most cases, I can assure you, we won't be called to enforce these matters because South Africans are good people that they listen, are good people that they respect the law. Few of those will be there to enforce, and to enforce the law will follow the law. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. With regards to the question, I think it's Vianney and one of a state of emergency again. At the first press briefing where all ministers were present, I explained the provisions in the Constitution that the state we're in, the state of national disaster, means that certain rights will be limited. And the limitation of rights is provided for by Section 36 of the Constitution, which states about issues that those rights can be limited in a manner which is in an open and a democratic society. Government can be able to justify if it is justifiable to limit those rights. And in this regard, what we are using to limit the rights at this stage is the various regulations that relates to health, that relates to sports, to the municipalities, including the Disaster Management Act, which is the anchoring legislation. So this process we're in is anchored on two legislations, the Disaster Management Act and the health regulations, because this disaster we're in is related to a health situation. And I read the Disaster Management Act. I just want to quote a very specific section from the question because I thought I had clarified it, but the question has come back again. Section 27 of the Disaster Management Act states in the following: in the event that a national disaster, the minister may, by notice in the Government Gazette, declare a national state of disaster. If Section 27(2) F, this relates to the question of a state of emergency and the restrictions of the movement of people. This is what it says, Section 27(2) F. If a national state of disaster has been declared in terms of subsection 1, the minister may, subject to subsection 3, after consulting the responsible cabinet member, make the regulations or issue directions or authorize the issue of directions concerning the regulation F the regulation of the movement of persons and goods to, from, or within the disaster-stricken or threatened area. I think this is clear. We can use this regulation for any purpose that can restrict the movement of persons, that can restrict the movement of goods in any disaster-stricken area, if we are of the view that such restriction will help us to prevent the disaster. The second question by Vuyo is also related to this, and I think the general has answered it a bit.
Vuyani, not Vuyo.
Oh, Vuyani. Oh, Vuyani. You also got your chance. Yeah. So the limitations of these rights and the regulations, they then empowers members of the South African Police Service to then enforce these regulations. So the issues of being sued and so forth, it will be done in line with the regulations and in line with the Section 36 that I've already referred you to, which allows the limitation of rights of people. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Like I said, I can't
about the capability in terms of numbers for the police. Usinikeze amanani abantu abamaphoyisa abayodila nalama restaurant njengoba bekile amanani wakhona siyabona.
Amanani aqondile owafunayo aphuma ekutheni amaphoyisa aseningizimu Afrika awu 197,000. Here, we are working on teams that will respond. It doesn't mean that each outlet will have a police. It means there will be teams that will respond on particular time as they get information. As it stands now, not 57 million people of South Africa that has a police per that person. So the teams that have capabilities and capacity to respond to that have been established and we continue to establish that. That's the first point. The second point, not all these 19 outlets will need the police response. Many South Africans, as we speak today, they have responded and they have said, Tumamina on this one will respect the law. I'm saying to you, I've been watching them saying they don't need the police because they understand the situation and they want to contribute. I repeat, few of them, they will need the enforcement. Bigger portion of them are ordinary, good South Africans that will keep the law. Thank you. Only the man.
I think just to add on the first one with regard to, he said this Vuyani and the colleagues he has there. I just want again to read N to show that whoever drafted this Disaster Management Act anticipated a situation where there could be further steps that are necessary. And it says that any other step that may be necessary to prevent an escalation of the disaster or to alleviate, contain, minimize the effects of the disaster. So from where we are sitting, we are of the view that the Disaster Management Act at this stage gives us all the necessary ammunition that we need to respond to the disaster.
Thank you very much, Minister. At this point, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank members of the media for responding to our call, both in Pretoria and in Cape Town. Thank you for your time. As well as to the communication teams from the GCIS, from South African Police Service, and the Department of Justice and Correctional Services for putting this media briefing together. And then thank you once again to our honorable ministers, Minister Tele and Minister Lamola, Deputy Ministers, Deputy Minister Matari and Minister Jeffrey, National Commissioner General Kole, Deputy National Commissioner Lieutenant General Nasemola, and all other senior officers from both the Department of Justice and Correctional Services as well as the SAPS. That concludes our media briefing, and thank you very much again.
I think you must sanitize first. You brought the catching this thing. Okay. Yeah, right. Are we going that way?
Well, exit.
We'll exit this way. Follow up. Minister, on your side, there's going to be one or more. I'm not sure you know that for directly. Just want to sanitize. That's shocking. Thanks. I'll give say I'm not sure you'll ask for as a minister.
I didn't hear you.
Yeah, we're going to
I didn't hear you. Okay. No, I didn't hear you calling me
you were also talking about coronavirus.
Yeah, okay, so Sunday is nothing, yes? What was happening?